Boom! We are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the Life as a Chad YouTube channel. And I thank all of you for being here, wherever you may be. And of course, however you may be listening. I was actually planning, I'm still going to do this video, but when I was doing some research on some interesting topics that could be discussed today, on Revolver News, I saw the piece of news about Ron DeSantis dropping out of the the Republican nomination race. I mean, really the presidential race as a whole, but specifically the Republican nominee race. Honestly, guys, I was a tad bit surprised. I thought that DeSantis, with his second place finish in Iowa, that there was going to be a good chance that he was going to continue at least through New Hampshire. I mean, not just a good chance. I thought for sure we were going to see him try his hand in New Hampshire, see where he's at after that state in particular, and then really assess things. Because once you're two states in, especially those early on states, those kind of quote unquote 50-50 toss-up states, which in my opinion, Iowa is no longer that after Trump became president of the United States. He's really consolidated support in the state of Iowa. And I know the state of Iowa very well. I have history there through various means. And I was always surprised when I was younger when Iowa would vote liberal, because I had been there many times before and I know the state to be a very conservative state. But now that I'm older, I can see that, and I've done previous videos concerning this, in those Midwest states in particular, and this is why Trump was able to win in 2016 in some people's eyes in shocking fashion, is because he was able to garner support from the working class, blue collar voters. That while they may lean more conservative, at the end of the day, they are going to vote based off of what is going to help them in their specific job and life the most. And at the time, obviously, those voters thought that Obama was going to help them as opposed to Bush. So I thought, anyways, bringing this back around to DeSantis, I thought that we were going to see DeSantis. I was totally expecting to do a video, a post reaction video about DeSantis, Haley, and Trump in New Hampshire, but DeSantis has dropped out. And, I'm going to pull up the story here from Revolver and see what they have to say on the matter. I think the before I read it, I think the general consensus from the pool of candidates, going back to Ramaswamy Vivek, some people say I say his last name wrong, that could be correct, is that Trump won by such a wide margin in what is considered a toss-up state, or a state that they could have actually done well in. And the fact that they did not do well in that state, not only did they not do well, but they lost in historic fashion, any more would be seen as pure lunacy and would only hurt them, not only in this race, but future races. Because as you guys can see, Rubio, Ted Cruz, and some of these, Chris Christie, some of these candidates who stayed to the bitter end in 2015, 2016 against Trump, when the establishment was doing exactly what the establishment is trying to do now. Okay, don't forget. Okay, Fox News, all the Republican establishment, including the left wing as well, It's very funny how often the Republican establishment and the left as a whole is on the same side together. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? But they stayed to the bitter end, and to this day, they have not been able to ever gain back some of the support that they lost due to being exposed during that time as being establishment puppets, even if they are conservative. And also, there's the element of the cash flow. Why continue to throw money down in a presidential race and when you could just pocket that money until a different time when the landscape is more winnable? Because the bottom line is, this race was decided probably several months before the actual voting started to take place. And everybody in each of these candidates' camps know that. They know deep down that Trump has a hold on the conservative movement, the Republican Party, which is great in my opinion. I'm just saying for them that they know that to be the case. Okay. Now, if you're Haley and you have this unlimited amount of establishment money, I suppose it doesn't matter. But if you're DeSantis and you're still technically governor of Florida and you've lost a decent amount of support, but it hasn't been necessarily detrimental to you in the future, because to tell you the truth, regardless of what DeSantis has been, which parts of him have been exposed, and some of his weak spots and soft spots have been exposed in this Republican nomination run, I think that a lot of people, due to what he has done in the state of Florida, are completely open-minded about DeSantis after Trump is done, after this presidential run is done. Now, it'll be interesting to see, let's say hypothetically, Trump, gets the nomination, the Republican nomination, but loses again to Biden. It would be very interesting to see if Trump decided to run for president again 4 years down the line. I mean, I wouldn't put it past him. He'd be getting up there in age. He really would be. But, this guy is full of energy, as he loves to put out there. So that's just some food for thought. I don't think he's going to lose to Biden unless there is massive, widespread fraud and cheating like we saw this past election, which is certainly possible. And quite frankly, the Republican Party has done nothing to thwart that. But I digress. So I think this is the right move for DeSantis. If I were in his camp, I think I maybe would have considered, since New Hampshire is just 2 days away, guys. I mean, I would have thought that if he was going to bow out, he would have bowed out like a day after the Iowa results, 2 days max. But New Hampshire is on Tuesday. All right. So at this point, I would have stayed in just to see how I did in that state. But you run the risk, and I think everything I've said is the case, but this is probably the main one up there with the money. They don't want to continue spending money on a fool's errand. But the main thing is that if DeSantis were to run in New Hampshire and put his name on the ballot and he got smoked like he did in Iowa, as Haley did in Iowa, it does paint you with a negative look. Okay. It doesn't look good that you get smoked in a state. All right. Because at the end of the day, when you're a politician, it's about winning. If second place means nothing. Third place means nothing. It's about, do you win? And if you don't win, and not only do you not win, you get smoked, it does leave a bad taste in voters' mouths. And so I guess what I'm getting at is it's better to not even be considered and be on there than it would be to be on there and get smoked and leave a bad taste in the voters' mouths. All right, let's read this article here from Revolver. DeSantis drops out, endorses Trump, slams Nikki Haley. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Woohoo! Damn, that's a fucking bar right there, DeSantis. That's a bar right there. Um, Today, Ron DeSantis ended his campaign for Presidente, and with all the ups and downs, Florida's best governor went out with his head held high. Many would agree that Ron DeSantis got some rather questionable advice and found himself struggling with really bad timing despite his impressive tenure as Florida's popular governor. DeSantis never stood a real chance against President Trump. There's a laundry list of campaign missteps, starting with that Twitter Space announcement. I couldn't agree more. I did a video on that, and it was just a bad look. It was a failure. In politics, there is really no middle ground. When you are in politics, it's either it was successful or it wasn't. You either win or you lose. Let's see here. Let's continue reading. Many would agree that, as far as the Twitter Space goes, as I said, guys, when I did the video, I think it was an interesting idea. And I think it says a lot about DeSantis, that he was willing to go the unorthodox way, the non-mainstream way, but it just wasn't thought out enough. It was not as smooth, clean as you need it. And if it can't be that way, then you're better off just going the traditional way, because ultimately in the game of politics, you can't make very many mistakes. And I remember 4 or 5 years ago, I was watching The Herd with Colin Cowherd in the morning before school, and he was talking about Trump versus Cruz. And the reason why Trump was winning, or one of the main reasons he was winning, he showed both of them on a stage and kind of how they presented one another. And, Cruz looked like a dork. He looked like a goofball. He like ran into his wife on stage or something like that. Whereas Trump, it was just visually appealing. And you could tell that he is knowledgeable about entertainment, angles on TV, and what is the most visually appealing, and he just has that down pat. And so, DeSantis doing that, it was interesting. It was a interesting idea, but the execution of it was a failure. Now, whether it was more Twitter's fault or his management team, whoever it was a failure and it did not work. All right. So, but I will say, though, I don't want to give him too much of a hard time with that, because I personally want presidents and political candidates to start using alternative platforms as a means to get out their message more and more. We are seeing Trump do that. We are starting, especially in the right wing, and this is why liberals have tried to completely infiltrate Facebook and Twitter and all of these social media platforms, because the right wing of politics and the right wing sphere has figured it out, that is an avenue that they can use to get their message out cheaply and effectively. So, and I want it to be done more and more, because I want nothing more than the mainstream corporate media to collapse. They are a parasite on the organism that is America. Let's keep reading. Many would agree that Ron DeSantis got some rather questionable advice and found himself struggling with really bad timing. Despite his impressive tenure as Florida's, we already read that. Still, even if everything had gone perfectly, DeSantis would have struggled to outshine Trump, who remains the undisputed leader of the nation's largest and most influential political movement. However, all of that theory and speculation has finally come to an end as DeSantis has pulled the plug on his struggling campaign. The signs were there, especially when DeSantis abruptly canceled two big national interviews on the Sunday talk shows. Later, Bloomberg, that's an interesting name, reported that DeSantis was making his exit to avoid a third place finish in New Hampshire and South Carolina. However, in the end, Ron DeSantis made a commendable choice. Breaking. This is from, I don't even know, Yashar Ali, another interesting name. Breaking. Bloomberg is reporting that Ron DeSantis and his aides are planning his exit from the presidential race, possibly before the New Hampshire primary, to avoid an embarrassing third place finish. See, again, as I keep saying, politics is all about appearance. It's all about what's optics, and having a third place finish and getting smoked by Trump and ultimately losing to a candidate like Haley is just not a good look. Even if you're saying all the right things and doing all the right things, it's still not a good look to have that on your record that you lost to those bozos. Trump, only has a few of those on his record, but he has way more victories than he does losses. So the more losses that you can put on your resume, the better. You're cutting your losses, essentially. No pun intended. He exited on a positive note by endorsing President Trump and his America First movement while criticizing Nikki Haley for her war-mongering globalist stance. Credit is due to him for making the right call when it truly counted. So here's the thing, guys. Here are my final thoughts. Well, let's see. Let's see what this is. Hold on. Let me see if I can share my sound here, because I want to give my final thoughts on him bouncing out and, kind of where I see DeSantis in the future. And why I thought that him deciding to get in this race, where the failures were exactly with his decision to get into the race. Let's listen to a little bit of this.
The warmth of being home is a reminder why I've chosen public service. From joining the United States Navy and serving in Iraq, to representing the people in the U.S. Congress, and now serving as governor of Florida. And it reminds me why I decided to run for president, to fight for those who have been forgotten in this country. This is America's time for choosing. We can choose to allow a border invasion, or we can choose to stop it. We can choose reckless borrowing and spending, or we can choose to limit government and lower inflation. We can choose political indoctrination, or we can choose classical education. These choices are symptoms of the underlying struggle to ensure that constitutional government can endure and that Western civilization can survive.
See, again, and I'm going to talk about this more. It's not that what he's saying is wrong per se, but it is, what made DeSantis popular when it was him going rogue, him going against the establishment, when he decided to alter course and keep Florida an open state when the whole lockdowns and all of that was going on, and making school a family choice thing, and parents being able to have a say in their kids' lives rather than other states where it's basically forced indoctrination. This is the same old Republican platitude plate of my small government, my taxes, my smaller taxes. my constitution. No, no, no. Okay, we're all of those things are well and good, but at the end of the day, it goes deeper than that. This is well deeper than that. You need to be talking about immigration, and I'm glad he brought that up, but you need to be talking about immigration, culture war things like the LGBTQT stuff. Uh, you need to be talking about the nuclear family and God driven things, God centered, biblical minded topics. All right. And dare I say, the changing of the average American face, if you catch my meaning. The depopulation and the changing of the population, if you will.
And we launched this campaign to bring accountability to government, regain sovereignty at our border, and restore sanity to our society. We cannot succeed as a country if we allow our nation to be invaded, our currency to be debased, our cities to crumble, and our kids to be indoctrinated. The DC elites who facilitated this mess do not care about you, and they do not work for you. They work for themselves. They seek to accumulate power at your expense.
Yeah, the problem there, though, Ron, is you took a lot of money from those people. That's the problem. Now, it wasn't, and now I get it. Every politician takes some money, all right? But, the great thing that Trump had going for him is he had his own money that he could throw into this. So he wasn't as beholden to some of these endorsers and donors as somebody like this Ron is. Getting money from elites, even if you see them as the better elites and more correct-minded elites, doesn't change the fact that you're still getting money from those same swamp-ass creatures. All right. Now, I can't say this on YouTube, but as I have said, DeSantis also had a lot of money from a certain people group that would take him away from an America first agenda and change it towards a different country first agenda. Okay. Now I don't want to, go too far into that, but that's the truth. Okay. And they are still the elites. Okay. To somebody like me, it is not surprising, so somebody like Ron calls them elites, but people like myself and other Americans know who they really are, who they, if you take off the word elites, what those people usually are. All right. And they do tend to be a certain people. I don't know how else to say it. And I'm not saying that it's always bad to get money from them, and I'm not saying to hate them or anything like that. As Christians, we love everybody. But there is something to be said about being more diligent about it, being more having a better game plan. When you are taking that sort of money and tempering expectations and, okay, you can give me this money, but if you are ultimately expecting this, I'd rather not have it because this needs to be an America first agenda by Americans. Okay. Strategy is the word I was looking for. So, but I'm going to get to that at the end as well. That is the major failing of Ron DeSantis as a whole is, why he even got into this race in the first place. And I'll talk after we're done listening to this.
To pursue an agenda that is harmful to the American people. Citizens do not serve politicians. It is the duty of politicians to serve you. Talk is cheap. Actions speak louder than words. Reversing the decline of this nation requires leadership that delivers big results for the people we are elected to serve. I have a record of leading with conviction, championing an agenda marked by bold colors, delivering on my promises, and defeating the people who are responsible for our nation's decline. That is the type of leadership we need for all of America. Now, over the past many months, Casey and I have traveled across the country to deliver a message of hope that decline is a choice and that we can, in fact, succeed again as a nation. Nobody worked harder, and we left it all out on the field. Now, following our second place finish in
Nice, nice sports metaphor, Ron. Nice.
Iowa, we
I'm sure
prayed
they're
and
all going to eat that shit up.
deliberated on the way forward. If there was anything
Yeah, he left it on the field. He left it on the court. He left it on the field. He left it on the ice. He left it everywhere.
I could do to produce a favorable outcome, more campaign stops, more interviews, I would do it. But I can't ask our supporters to volunteer their time and donate their resources if we don't have a clear path to victory. Accordingly, I am today suspending my campaign. I'm proud to have delivered on 100% of my promises, and I will not stop now. It's clear to me that a majority of Republican primary voters want to give Donald Trump another chance. They watch his presidency get stymied by relentless resistance, and they see Democrats using
I agree. That's a good point. That's probably the most accurate thing he said in this video.
lawfare this day to attack him. Well, I've had disagreements with Donald Trump, such as on the coronavirus pandemic and his elevation of Anthony Fauci. Trump is superior to
Fair. That's fair.
the current incumbent, Joe Biden. That is clear. I signed a pledge to support the Republican nominee, and I will honor that pledge. He has my endorsement because we can't go back to the old Republican guard of yesteryear.
I agree, Ron. I agree. Which we need to discuss when the video's done.
A repackaged form of warmed-over corporatism that Nikki Haley represents.
True.
The days of putting
True, Ron. Yes. Fuck, that's fire. He's spitting bars right now.
Americans last, of kowtowing to large corporations, of caving to woke ideology, are over. I thank all of our passionate supporters who have stood by us through it all. That we had people volunteer to come to Iowa in the middle of a blizzard to knock on doors and make phone calls touched us dearly. No candidate had more thrown at him, but no candidate had so many committed volunteers and staff. Finally, I want to thank my wife, Casey, and our kids, Madison, Mason, and Mamie. Casey's gone far above and beyond in her support for our campaign and for our cause. She's not only a great wife and mother, she's a great American.
Let's see what Casey looks like. Let's take a look at Casey. Ron DeSantis, wife. Is she Latina? Is she Latina? Let's see. She's from Troy, Ohio. No, she's just one of those white chicks that because of her brunette hair looks Latina. But Jill Casey Black was born on June 26, 1980. Damn, she's old. The second child of Robert Black, an optometrist and former officer in the United States Air Force, and Jean, a speech language pathologist, and the daughter. I was just looking at her her age again. A speech language pathologist and the daughter of a Sicilian immigrant. So she's Italian. She graduated from the College of Charleston, where she received a Bachelor of Science in Economics with a minor in French. And she was on the equestrian team. Let's see this real quick.
Pronouncenames.com.
I don't know if
Caponigro.
All right. So I didn't say it wrong. All right, let's go back to this.
Who cares deeply about the future of the country that our kids will inherit. Our kids have seen and done a lot on the trail.
Hold on, I didn't even get to see her pictures. Let's go back. All right. Yeah, she's cute. Yeah, she's cute. Cute little Italian woman. All right, let's officially go back. Come on. Come on.
From playing on the famed Field of Dreams baseball site in Iowa to making their first snowman in New Hampshire. They are one of the reasons we fight so hard for what we believe in. Winston Churchill once remarked that success is not final, failure is not fatal, it is the courage to continue that counts. While this campaign has ended, the mission continues. Down here in Florida, we will continue to show the country how to lead. Thank you, and God bless.
I thought it was half good. I thought the last part was good. I do like the quote, success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. And I'm a big believer. This is from my sports background. You shouldn't be a results oriented individual. What matters the most is the process, and finding a way to enjoy the process and be obsessed with the process, because if you worry about that above all else, the results will come. If you place importance on that as opposed to the results and putting too much into the results one way or the other, negative or positive, most of the time your results are going to end up being what they should be. And I would say they're going to be positive. So going back to DeSantis, after a little life advice there, his main failure was going from, and I already touched upon this a little bit, going from this guy who is seen a lot in the light of Trump, this rebel, this against the establishment, against corruptness, against the swamp figure. And then he ends up taking all this money from the establishment. And no matter how much they tried to hide it, no matter how much they tried to thwart that information, everybody knew it. Everybody knew, based off of the tone of major media corporations and establishment figures, that DeSantis was the guy that the establishment put in place to defeat Trump. And that was his mistake. That was his error. Essentially, he made a deal with the devil and it burned him. And it did not end up being successful for him. And that's really what it boiled down to. Overall, it was a total cataclysmic error, mistake for him to enter into this race. He never had a chance of winning. He should have waited his turn. I don't know what behind the scenes ultimately pushed him towards running, whether he even had much of a choice in the matter or not. But either way, he did. And he ended up taking money from establishment donors, and he ended up being put and thrust into the same light as Nikki Haley. So as much as he is saying that he endorses Trump, the fact is that in this race, he was seen in the same light as Nikki Haley rather than Trump. You look 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, people did see, hell, I would even say three years ago, people did see him in the same light as Trump. You fast forward, and I would say up until about a year and a half ago, people saw him in the same light as Nikki Haley, because people can see. Not everybody is stupid. The tone, the overtone, people have 2 ears and 2 eyes for a reason. They could see that he was the establishment darling. And when there were some mistakes made, they threw him out like yesterday's garbage. And then they went to Haley. But that didn't change the fact that he took that money and that people saw him in the same light as Haley. He went from being seen in the same light as Trump to the same light as Haley. When I did my previous videos about this Republican race, what did I always say? I said that there's the America First, which is Vivek and Trump, and there's the neocon side of things, establishment, and it is DeSantis and it's Haley and, Christie and all of them. No matter how hard they tried to thwart that information, it was what it was. Everybody knew the truth, and that was the biggest mistake. Like I said, I really don't know what could have made him decide to do this. My guess is he is beholden to a lot of very prominent individuals, wealthy individuals, and they said, you have to run, Ron, or else you're not going to be given our support for governor or anything else ever in the future. So you're going to have to do this, win or lose. Even if you don't want to do it, you're doing it. And that's why I always say that you do have to look at who is financing a politician. It does matter, because it does influence the decisions that they make. So I hope that DeSantis can rid himself of some of this, some of these chains, because when he doesn't have those chains, I think he actually has a pretty good pulse on what Americans want and the will of the people. The future of DeSantis, I think, is totally comes down to that. Will he rid himself of those shackles and chains that are the establishment and that type of money? Will he be able to find a way to do that, or will he basically get even deeper into the establishment pockets? And years down the line, he is nothing. He is a full-fledged puppeteer, or puppet of the puppeteers that is the establishment. Because we've seen it time and time again where politicians, as time goes on, not only they get worse in their puppetness. We've seen it time and time again. So I really think that is the main question for DeSantis, and he's going to have reflection on that, and really think hard about what is going to get him across that finish line. And he's also going to have to really ask himself whether he truly wants to be president of the United States, or whether he is better off as governor. I think that because he is so young and has been so successful, regardless of how he did or did not do in this Republican nomination run, that his destiny is already kind of set in place for him. He's going to run for president again, because he can only be governor of Florida for so long. What is he going to do after that? Is he just going to be a popular figure? That's it? Nothing more, nothing less? No, he's going to want to do the next thing, which is to be president. I don't know if he could maybe run for senator and be a senator if let's say the president thing fails and he's done being governor and then he goes to being a senator. I don't know. It sounds like he did already serve in Congress. So, but ultimately, if you look at this and prognosticate, Trump is going to be the nominee, and he may not beat Biden. And as I said earlier in the video, it is possible that he, after 4 years, tries it all again. I think it's obviously much less likely because of how much older he's going to be, and just how much turmoil he has gone through to be president of the United States. Okay, there's very few figures in history who have gone through as much as Trump has gone through to hold public office. But DeSantis will never have a shot until Trump is done. Once Trump is done, the new landscape will be Vivek, DeSantis, and Haley. We'll see who else, maybe Josh Haley, what other candidates start to emerge. And I think DeSantis, his main competition is going to be determined by what he decides to do as far as donor backing goes. If he's going to take the establishment money, his primary contender is going to be Nikki Haley for that same money. And then it'll be Vivek that will be his competition across the aisle. Will he learn his lesson and steer clear of accepting some of that money, and be less beholden and therefore more capable of enacting and enforcing an America First agenda? I hope he can do that, because I do agree with Roger Stone on this, that DeSantis is an excellent enforcer, or not enforcer, but yeah, I guess enforcer or implementer. He is. He's very good at implementing things. I don't know if DeSantis would consider being vice president to Trump. honestly, that was the play all along. He should have just continued to be governor. And then if Trump asked him to be his vice president candidate, legitimately consider it. Now, I hate that this is the case. I think that there's at least a 70% chance that Trump is going to pick a female as his vice president. I hate that that's the case, but I would say it's at least a 70% chance. The good news is there's not very many female Republican candidates that are legitimate options that would help his case in any way. Whereas, you can make a case for Vivek, in a variety of ways. You can make the case for DeSantis. So, we'll see. But that's what he should have done. He should have just continued to be governor of Florida. And then, if Trump decided to offer him that vice president seat, legitimately consider it. And, I would take it, because if Trump had DeSantis done that, and he still has the option, okay? But had DeSantis done that and Trump wins, as he's going to, and then Trump asked him to be his vice president, when Trump was done in his 4 years, DeSantis would have been the top candidate to be the next Republican candidate for president. But I digress. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for listening. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Like, comment, share, subscribe. You guys know the drill. And last but not least, DBAP, don't be a pussy, Willow. In fact, your feelings, because your feelings just don't matter. Christ is king. Peace.